You're listening to the Dirty Air Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Dirty Air Podcast here on NASCAR.com, YouTube, iTunes, wherever you're listening. I'm Chuck Bush. I'm joined in studio today by Jonathan Merriman, and on the phone, we have Regan Smith joining us again here in the Dirty Air. Regan, Jonathan, welcome to the show. How y'all doing?
I'm good.
You good?
I'm great. How are you guys doing this week?
Doing well. Got back from Phoenix, and it's nice and sunny here in Charlotte, too.
Well, we missed you last week there. I know we had a fill-in in the driver's seat there, and I don't know, did he keep the seat warm for you? Is everything good there still?
He did. The seat's fine. The board looks like he didn't wreck it too much, and I feel like Jonathan did a great job.
We kept all four corners on the car.
Kind of like that finish at Phoenix. All four corners, and then there at the fourth corner, guess what happened?
It was amazing.
It was amazing.
It was an amazing finish.
Let me ask this question. Do you guys call it the fourth corner or the third corner at Phoenix?
And see, that's a tricky one because you got that little that little dog leg, so that kind of what do you consider as a driver? What do you call it?
Maybe it's the fifth corner. It could be the fifth corner technically, and that's why things got so crazy by the time they got over there to it. Who knows?
I don't know what they call it, but I like it.
Well, I'll tell you that finish. I was standing there right by the start-finish line with Matthew Dillner, our camera guy, and we were talking about, all right, so here's our post-race plan. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Restart comes out, and that finish caught everyone off guard. It was quite possibly one of the most spectacular finishes I've seen, and everybody was just standing there like, holy cow.
Well, there was a lot of elements to that. I think you got to look at the fact that you had Kevin Harvick on old tires, and I don't know the exact lap count on tires at that point. Let's just say it was roughly 60 laps. The tires were falling off. They were a handful. The cars were slipping and sliding after they'd get 20, 30 laps on them, and that was the same for everybody through the field. But then you got the 19 car who's got two right side tires on. He's starting, would he start fifth in the pack, fourth, something like that? So he's got to pass some guys to even get up to Kevin Harvick. A lot of elements to that finish that that certainly bred for it to be a good finish when all was said and done. But then the move that Carl made, you think anytime you see somebody get into the corner like that, get into the left rear quarter of somebody, you typically anticipate that car that got into the quarter panel would be the car that's going to come out on top. And what shocked me was that Kevin was able to keep his forward momentum going and get off of turn four. I'll call it turn four because that is what I call it when I go there. I was just asking a question earlier, but it shocked me that he was able to keep his momentum up, get the power down, and have enough steam to even make it a race by the time he got to the start-finish line. And we saw Carl do everything he could do. He door slammed him before he got there, trying to slow him down. He made every trick in the book that we know as drivers. He attempted them all, and it just didn't quite work out. It just wasn't meant to be. But what a finish! I mean, that you can't ask for more than that. That's short track racing. They bumped each other, they rubbed each other. One guy finished first, one guy finished second. And, I think that's what NASCAR is all about in my eyes.
It was perfect. Carl made one mistake, and he didn't get back into Harvick soon enough. He hit him right there at the wheel, slowed him down just a little bit. But how about two guys that haven't always seen eye to eye be able to have a finish like that and then shake each other's hand after the race? Because Harvick and Edwards, they've had a couple run-ins in the past, but I thought it was a great race, great sportsmanship after the race, what NASCAR should be.
And you can check out the video of that on NASCAR.com. We had a camera right there when Carl we got his reaction to the finish, and then shaking Kevin's hand there as he was heading to victory lane. Now, Regan, I know you have been a part of a couple of photo finishes, specifically Daytona in 2014. What's it like from a driver's perspective to be in that tight of a battle for the win?
Well, it's exciting. I mean, and you look at the past couple races I've had. We had Daytona was a photo finish. Talladega a couple of years ago, that was a close photo finish. And Mid Ohio last year was a bump and run, very similar to what was attempted on Sunday. And I can say this from a driver's standpoint, a driver's perspective, all wins are special. It doesn't change anything about them, whether they're close or whether you blow them away. But the close ones stick out in your mind just a little bit more. That sheer excitement of, holy cow, we just passed them on the last corner of at the end of the straightaway, or we shouldn't have won this race and we pulled it off. That feeling is different than just going out there and maybe you have a race where you dominated or where you led a bunch of laps and expected to win when it got down to the end of it. For whatever reason, those photo finish ones really stick out in your mind, and they they have more of a lasting effect on you, I guess, as they should, because they're exciting and they have a different element to them.
And I was talking with Rodney Childers after the race, and he said that type of finish, like, he loves to win and he likes to go out there and dominate, but that's the type of finish he's going to remember when he's 80, sitting in a wheelchair or sitting in a rocking chair.
And Kevin Harvick has had several finishes like this. When he beat Mark Martin in the Daytona 500, that was a close finish. His first win, beating Jeff Gordon in Atlanta, was a close finish, and now this one. So Kevin Harvick's kind of got a knack for close finishes and a knack for Phoenix International Raceway. 8 out of his 32 Sprint Cup Series wins have come there. That's a quarter of his win total coming at one track.
And
newsflash. He's good there.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's really good there.
Kevin kind of knows Phoenix. Now, we've had now 4 races, and 2 of them have ended in photo finishes.
It's 50%, Charles.
It's 50% of excitement.
Yeah.
Is this a product of the new package, Regan?
Well, let me preface this by saying that's good and bad. The good part is the races have been absolutely exciting. The finishes have been, just phenomenal. I mean, we couldn't ask for better finishes than what we've seen this year. The bad part to that is now the expectation is that we're going to do that every week, and the reality is finishes like that don't happen every week, and they shouldn't happen every week. That's part of the lure of why you watch the race and why you want to get into it and say, hey, I'm gonna watch 200 laps to see what happens at the end, because you might understand why this guy won or why that guy won or whatever happens to cause it to happen. I want to be cautious in saying that, we can go do that every week, because it's just not the reality of what we do. Most weeks somebody's going to be better than everybody else and is going to be out front and win. With that said, I don't think this package is hurting this at all for making finishes like this. The reason being is, the other day, obviously the first 2 cars stayed out, took their chances. Everybody behind them, some took 2 tires, some took 4 tires. That was a product of the low downforce, low grip tire package that we had, and causing guys to maybe use a little more of a strategy play. Had that been the old tire, had that been last year at Phoenix, I think we'd have seen 8 to 10 cars stay out on their old tires, decide not to pit, and we wouldn't have been talking about the battle for the win the same way that we are right now, because you wouldn't have had somebody coming through the field on fresh tires like what we saw with Carl the other day. So certainly this package is playing a part in that, but I want to caution everybody into thinking that it's going to happen every week like that, because it's there's a reason why there's only so many closest finishes in history, because they don't happen every day.
Well, you talked about that not happening every day. Something else that doesn't happen every day, Jimmy Johnson's steering wheel came off in qualifying.
Ooh, yeah, that was scary.
Well, take us through your routine and how something like that could happen and what you do to prevent it.
Well, let me preface this by saying I haven't talked to anybody I haven't talked to Jimmy. I haven't talked to anybody at Hendrick Motorsports or anybody in the know of what exactly happened. So I'm not talking knowledgeably on that situation that took place on Friday, other than the fact that his wheel did come off. I saw the video just like everybody else did of that thing popping off and almost hitting him in the head, it looked like. From a driver's perspective, one of the 2 scariest things that can happen is a fire in a race car or a steering wheel coming off. And part of the reason for the steering wheel being so scary is because when that wheel pops off, for the people who don't know, we've got a steering column that's basically a 2-inch diameter piece of metal with a spline on the end of it. And there's some safety devices built in within that metal that allow it to collapse and allow it to, if you hit the wall, break apart and not move. But with that said, that's still a spear sitting there looking at you at the point where that wheel comes off. And as you're going head first into the wall, there's few things more scary than that. Me personally, I have a system that I've done for a number of years. And this for me dates back to when Steve Park, he had an incident years ago and it involved the steering wheel. And I was friends with Steve at the time and heard about that, found out about what took place. And ever since then, I've been really, I will click the wheel on and off of my steering column at least 3 times. I always do it 1, 2, 3 and feel it latch 3 times. Sometimes I'll do it as many as 6. I had an in-car camera in some of the Xfinity races last year, and I'd sit there and do it like 10 times sitting on the grid before we rolled off to do the pace laps. And we'd watch back through some of those in-car cameras in the shop, and the guys were like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, it's a nervous habit almost at this point. But I do it to make sure that thing is locked in place. Then I tug on it again, and if I need to, even before I roll off, I'll do it again just to be extra cautious with it. So definitely a scary situation, something that we all think about, and everybody has their own systems on how they handle it. But thankful, everything worked out okay, and Jimmy was fine when all was said and done.
And we have the highlight of that on NASCAR.com. We also have sound from Jimmy Johnson that Saturday morning where he took ownership of it and said that was on him, that he's adding a few more things. He talked to Jeff Gordon that night and said that Jeff had a couple of ideas that he could, implement to try and have that not happen again. But, it just proves that type of stuff can happen to anyone. I mean, you have a 6-time champ, and that's happening to him. Jonathan?
Exactly what you said. I don't have anything else to add to that other than, Jimmy Johnson didn't want to talk about it with the media, after it happened Friday. He wanted to go back and talk to the team about it, and that's why they disclosed it, the day after. But, kudos to him for being honest and coming up with a solution. And it just goes to show you can't be too careful. And Regan, making sure your wheel's on 10 times before a race, it's all worth it if you don't hit the wall, because he hit hard.
Yeah, and let's point out, he, as you guys said, he did own up to it. He said that my steering wheel, much like my helmet or my Hans device or my seatbelts, that's my responsibility. I've got to make sure that that's done right. So he owned up to it. Now, I do want to point out, in his defense, there's a lot of things that have been added to these race cars that we have to be a little more particular about and a little more careful about. We've got, with the additions of the track bar adjuster on the steering wheel, we've also got our push-to-talk buttons on the steering wheel. Some drivers have a Gatorade button on their steering wheel. Those are all wires that run down the steering column. So you got to make sure those wires are cleared out and not in there. And sometimes those wires can trick you into thinking your wheel's on there tight when maybe it isn't. Some of the teams have developed new steering hubs of how they actually connect the wheel to the steering column. And I don't know every team's systems, but who knows if it was something in there that made him think it was locked in place or whatnot. But I do know since then he's come out, his interior guys come out and they said, we're doing a new deal where we put a stripe on this, on this wheel at a certain spot so we can tell if it's on there. So now not only does Jimmy check it, but a guy standing outside the car is going to check it as well. So who knows what's going to come from this? Maybe down the road we come up with a new system that allows us to make sure the car, won't fire without that being locked in place or something like that. But I'm sure we'll make the most of it, and I'm glad everybody was okay in that situation.
I want to touch on something real quick that you mentioned in there. Some cars have a Gatorade button?
Some cars have a Gatorade button. I do not personally have that, but some cars do. Yeah.
I learned something today. I did not know that, you could just call up some Gatorade like you're say, hey, I'm coming into the pits. Nope, I'm going to get some Gatorade.
The heck with the digital dash.
Yeah. Gatorade button. Technology in NASCAR, it's an awesome thing.
We're like Inspector Gadget inside of those things.
It's getting to be that way with the dash and all that stuff. So looking ahead, though, to we talked about it earlier, we've seen some exciting finishes. And the past couple of years at Auto Club Speedway have been some exciting races. That track's gotten worn in, and you're seeing, like, the seams. Folks are finding groove in those seams and grip in those seams. What are we going to see out there in California this weekend?
Well, we're going to see the same thing we've seen to this point this year. We're going to see a race that looks, in my eyes, looks very similar to Atlanta. Cars will be sideways. Guys will be slipping, sliding, looking for grip wherever they can. The only difference from Atlanta to California, I would say, is you're going to see every car after about 5 laps running up against the wall. We'll be as high as we can get on that racetrack. We'll be, rim riding it as close to the wall as we can get without hitting the wall, hoping that we don't jump the cushion or make a mistake. The tire wear there in the past has been very extreme compared to other racetracks. Now we're going to put this package on with a little bit softer tire. I would anticipate that tire wear being even more extreme. I don't know what to predict for tire fall off as we sit here right now. I'm going to guess in my head it's going to be somewhere between 3 to 3.5 seconds from the start of a run to the end of a run. It could be far greater than that. I wouldn't expect it to be any less than that, but it could be even more than that. So, it could be exciting for the drivers to try and figure out where they need to be, how hard they need to push it early on in runs, and what to do at the end of runs.
I think for me, watching those races and being at Auto Club Speedway the past couple of years, those restarts there towards the end where it just fans out to 4 or 5 wide, going through those, like what's going through your mind when you're seeing it spread out like that?
Well, the first thing I think about is Chuck likes these restarts, so let's keep doing them, even if we're 5 wide, because there's no stress involved for the drivers at all. I can tell you this, it is one of the most stressful things that we do is when you get 5 wide and the spotter says, 2 inside, 2 outside. You're doing the math in your head. You're trying to figure out, okay, if I got 2 inside and 2 outside, that means I need to run this part of the corner going into the corner. The heck with it. I'll just go down low. I mean, it gets very dicey, and you can't predict where a car is going to be. You can't predict who's going to dive bomb you, who's going to slip up in front of you. It's very exciting from the driver's seat, and like I said, our primary concern is if Chuck's enjoying it or not, which it sounds like you are, so that's good.
Yeah, I mean that obviously should be your primary concern when you are driving a race car at close to 200 miles an hour. Is that am I satisfied? So as long as that's going through your head, I think that I have won. Where I didn't win though, that was in NASCAR Fantasy Live. We had a tight race this week in our fantasy league. Regan, you're still up there at the top, I believe. But real quick, going around, who are we looking at for our NASCAR Fantasy Live pick of the week and maybe your sort of budget pick of the week, Jonathan?
My pick of the week is going to be Carl Edwards. I mean, we talked about Atlanta being very wide, old, slick, and fast, and that's a signature Carl Edwards, success story. So I think Carl Edwards is gonna do well there. And a value pick, I think Kyle Larson's gonna have a good run. He has no choice to have a good run this week. He hasn't really done that well like we thought he would do early on in the year. I think they find something turning around, and Kyle Larson will pay off.
Regan, who are you looking at?
I like your pick. I like both your picks actually for your value and your main pick. But for my main pick, I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. I think that he's been chipping away at it all year to this point. Been top 5 every week as far as I know in the season so far, and has had a lot of speed. Those JGR cars just look really good this year. It looks like they've got their act together. They've done their homework. So I'm going to pick Kyle Busch for my lock. And for a value pick, I'm gonna have to copy Jonathan here and go with Kyle Larson. I mean, this track plays right into his hand, slipping, sliding, no downforce, rim riding up against the wall. There's nothing that goes against Kyle with that happening at a racetrack.
Well, I'm gonna go against both of you on both of my picks. I think for my pick for the race, I'm looking at Martin Truex Jr. Cole Pern has served that 1 race suspension. He's going to be back. This team has looked like they've been on a mission all season long. I think this could be the race where they get it done. For my value pick, I'm looking at a Roush car. I'm looking at Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He's just under $15, and they have been showing something with that team. So I think Stenhouse, maybe he might not get the win, but he's going to be in contention, and he looks like a pretty good value pick too.
If he hadn't blown a tire, at Phoenix, I mean,
he had a great run at Phoenix. Yeah,
he is. Yeah, that team has definitely been carrying the Roush group and the Roush effort so far this year. It's been impressive the turnaround that Ricky's had, and I think that's a good value pick. I can't argue with you on it.
Hey, that's a good one for me. Well, you know what? We'll end on that. I've got Regan Smith thinking about me in the car when he's going around the track at Auto Club Speedway, and he likes my value pick too. So for everybody here at the Dirty Air Podcast, for Jonathan Merriman, Regan Smith on the phone, I'm Chuck Busch reminding you to hop out there in that clean air, chase down the leader, and we'll see you next week back in the pack here in the Dirty Air.